How much money does it cost to buy a house in New Hampshire, the average house? Hey, I'm Ryan Tufts. I work at North Point Mortgage. Let's talk about how to actually pull this off. So as you probably have seen, the houses in New Hampshire, they're not decreasing in price. We're a Boston suburb, so yeah, even though we're in New Hampshire, houses still are kind of expensive. So we're gonna look at an average price point of a $500,000 house and see what that costs. A lot of people call me and they either have the number as way too low or way too high. Few people know exactly what the number is going to be. People wrongly assume that you need a 20% down payment. You don't. You can put down 5, 10, 15, 20% down or more. Today we're going to talk about a 3% down payment, which is the minimum down payment required for a first-time buyer. So if you're buying a $500K house, 3% down, quick check of math, $15,000 for your down payment. Now that's not nothing, but it's not $100K that a 20% down payment would be. Next thing we have to consider is closing costs. This gets looked over quite a bit. People that haven't bought a house in a while are super low, and people are just kind of scared by this. So a rough number is it ends up being about 3% of the sales price of the house, but it's not exact. So let's break it down. I made an exact example. I came up with $14,527 that you would need for closing costs on this new house. So we add those two up, that is about $29,000. Let's dive into that closing cost number a little bit more. First, you have lender fees. We have staff we've got to pay here. We've got some third parties that reports that we need, like your credit report, a flood report. If we have to approve your condo, if you're buying a condo or a townhouse, that costs money. That's going to be about $2,000 to $3,000. Then you have a title company that's going to legally transfer the deed from the sellers to you. All of their work, some of their costs are fixed and some scale up and down with the price of your house. You're looking at about $2,500 to $3,000 there. One thing that is commonly misunderstood is your escrows. So most people, particularly if you're buying your first house, a monthly amount for your taxes and insurance are going to be part of your mortgage. So when that tax bill comes due twice a year and your insurance bill comes due once a year, you're going to already have set aside money to pay those bills as part of your monthly payment. Well, at the closing, we've got to stick some money in there so you don't start that escrow account with $0. So that ends up being a lot. It's 6 months worth of taxes. So in this example, I'm assuming that taxes are about $6,000 a year. So that's $3,000 we're putting in your tax escrow. And if your insurance is $125 a month, say $1,500 a year, we're going to put 3 months of your insurance into that escrow account so that you already start off with a few $1,000s, so that by the time that first tax bill comes due or the next insurance bill comes due, you'll have enough money in there so that those bills can get paid out of that money. So that right there, what's that? $3,000 in taxes, another $375 insurance. That's another $3,300. We haven't even got to the government yet. The state of New Hampshire charges 0.75% as a transfer stamp. So it's not a sales tax, it's not income tax, it's transfer stamps. 0.75% on $500,000 is going to run you $3,750. Plus, when you buy a house, the deed and the mortgage are public record. What does that mean? Well, back in the day, someone would go down and literally give a copy of that to the county and they would save it. Now it's all done electronically. So they're going to scan or upload a copy of your mortgage and your deed. The county charges by page. That's about $206 on the average property. From there, you're going to pay 1 year of homeowners insurance up front. So in this example, we'll say that's $1,500. And then prepaid interest. If you're buying a house, say on the 15th of the month, your first payment won't be due that next first. It'll be due the following first, so about 45 days later. Your first mortgage payment is going to cover all the principal and interest for that first full month that you had the house. But in those kind of that period in between the date you close and the next first, you still owe interest because you're borrowing money. I mean, the bank, we're not just going to lend you money for free. The money came from somewhere, so you got to pay interest on it. So the number of days that are remaining in the month you close in, you're going to pay interest on. So in our example, well, I guess if there's 10 days left in the month, let's say, that's about $900. So we add all that together. That's why closing costs are about $14,500 on our 500K sample. Not because of one person's like, hey, we just need that used to be the price of a small sedan. I brought my Kia back in 2014. It was like $13,000. That's how much closing costs are now. So it seems like we have a problem. We have $29,000 to buy our house. Could you get a gift to pay for some of that? Sure. It's not easy just to come up with that sum of money. I remember when I got my first job, I was like, if I can just save $80 a paycheck, someday I'll have $1,000. And yeah, it took a while to get there because I was making like $11 an hour back in the day. Anyways, so how can you come up with this $29,000? If you have it, great. If you've already saved for it, if anyone in your family's talked about giving you a gift, awesome. Occasionally, can we get the sellers to chip in to pay your closing costs? 5 and 10 years ago, this was happening. I see it a little bit now, but with how competitive the market still is in 2026, and I will say it's easier than it's been the last 5 years to buy a house. I wouldn't count on that, but it is theoretically possible the seller can contribute towards your closing costs. One thing that I would keep in mind is New Hampshire housing. So for most families in New Hampshire, right now the current limit's at about $180,000 a year of income or less. You're eligible to get $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 of down payment assistance or closing costs. So that $5,000, $10,000, or $15,000 could go towards your total bill of, remember we had $15,000 for the down payment, about $14,500 for closing costs. So that's $29,500. If you can get New Hampshire housing and pay $15,000, now you're halfway home between savings, a gift, maybe the seller chipping in. Usually there's a way to make it happen. If you haven't started saving yet, I would say the absolute minimum that you need to buy a house is probably $3,000, and that's if you do New Hampshire housing and the sellers are paying towards your closing costs, because that $3,000 will go towards your deposit on the home. In all these cases, the deposit on your home just goes towards what you owe at the end, paying for an appraisal, paying for inspections. Let's circle back to that New Hampshire housing thing for a little bit. So it's not free money. It's not a grant. It's a second loan that you get at the time you buy the house. Has no interest and it has no monthly payment, but you have to pay it back if you ever refinance or sell the property. So there's a pro and con. And also each increment of 5, 10, or 15K you take comes with a little bit of a higher interest rate. So for example, I put together a scenario where someone's buying this place for $500K, putting a 3% down. With the taxes, with the insurance, with the mortgage insurance, they're looking at a monthly payment of about $38.84. That's with making the minimum down payment. If they were to take the full cash assistance and the interest rate would go up, and again, this is just as of one day, so just use these rates as, for illustrative purposes. Say instead of 6.5, they got 7.375. If they took the full down payment assistance, that moves their payment up a couple $100, about $180. Is that right? 41.68. Yeah, about $200. So, almost $300. So each case will vary. You only really want to take the down payment assistance if you need it, but it can pay about half of what you're going to need as a first-time buyer. And if you end up borrowing less, say your house is $400K, the difference in the payment will be smaller because you're borrowing less money. Final things here, don't forget, if there's a way to buy a house, if you still have any money left, you want to go into buying a house with some savings and not with your last dollar if possible, because not only are there moving costs, buying blinds, getting set up, getting the house clean, buying paint, a gallon of paint costs a lot more than a gallon of gas. You want to have some money in there. That first repair that's going to come up, who knows how much that's going to cost. So if there's a way to leave yourself some savings, that could be another argument to take some of the down payment assistance too, because let's say you took $5K of assistance and your payment went up like $60, $70, having that $5K cushion could be a lifesaver, if the hot water heater goes or if there's some window you got to repair. I don't know. It could be any number of things. Very lastly, I guess what I want to say is if there's any other payment scenarios that you want to run through, you can drop the number down in the comments or reach out to me directly. My contact info is here. A lot of people, even if they're a year or two away from buying a house, it's really easy to have like a 15-minute conversation just to talk over your plan so you can get oriented to exactly what you're going to need to do. A couple things we didn't talk about. If you end up doing an FHA loan instead of a conventional, like we've talked about, the difference is the down payment will be 3.5% versus 3% as the minimum. So that would add another, 0.5%? Wow, my math is bad. $2,500 to this down payment. Or if you're a veteran or you're looking to do a USDA loan, that down payment is zero. So then you're just looking at paying the closing cost of the closing costs really don't change between these type of loans, maybe minutely, $14,500 to $15,000. If you're doing a VA loan, which is very common in New Hampshire, we have a lot of veterans that live here, Don't need to worry about the down payment, your closing costs. Now it's just up to your savings. We can still use that New Hampshire Housing Down Payment Assistance. So that could potentially cover all the money that you need to buy a house. You might be able to get into a house with very little out of pocket. All right. Thanks for listening. If you're still here, again, I'm Ryan Tufts with North Point Mortgage. I'll see you next time.